Most Revolutionary War movies are garbage. They're inaccurate, melodramatic, and way more interested in flag-waving than telling the truth. But a handful of them? They actually get it right. They show the war as it really was. Political, full of infighting, bad decisions, and regular people just trying to survive. I've gone through every major Revolutionary War film, checked the sources, and pulled together the 10 that come closest to historical reality. Not just good movies, historically accurate ones. They give you the clearest picture of what that war actually looked like. This one might look like your standard Broadway to Hollywood musical, but it's one of the few that doesn't shy away from the messiness of American history. It's set in the Second Continental Congress during the weeks leading up to the Declaration of Independence, and what makes this one stand out is how closely it sticks to real sources. A lot of the dialogue and lyrics are pulled directly from letters, memoirs, and actual congressional debates. The film doesn't pretend these guys were all on the same page. The South threatens to walk out over slavery being mentioned in the Declaration. The North's complicity gets called out, and yes, there's a musical number about it that was so controversial, some TV broadcasts later cut it entirely. And yet, despite being a musical, historians have praised this film for being surprisingly accurate. Even the Massachusetts Historical Society gave it a thumbs up for how it handled characters like Dickinson and Adams. Revolution is one of those rare war movies that bombed so badly it basically vanished overnight. Al Pacino starred in it. It had a $28 million budget, and it made less than $500,000. But underneath all that is a film that, while messy, actually tried to show what the Revolutionary War looked like for everyday people. Pacino plays Tom Dobb, a New York fur trapper who's just trying to live his life until his son gets dragged into the army. Dobb joins up to protect him, and the story follows them through some of the war's biggest events, the Battle of Brooklyn, Valley Forge, Yorktown, but all from ground level. I gotta admit, the character work doesn't hold up. The dialogue is melodramatic, the performances are uneven, and some scenes feel straight out of a bad TV movie. But visually, the filmmakers got a lot right. They shot in preserved colonial villages that looked like New York in the 1770s. The battles are grounded in historical tactics, and the attention to costume, lighting, and atmosphere is serious. The movie even got some recognition from historians for the way it handled the Battle of Brooklyn, not as a big hero moment, but as a chaotic and brutal loss. That battle nearly ended the whole revolution in one shot. John Paul Jones is exactly what it says on the tin. A straight-shot biography of America's most famous naval commander. It follows Jones from his early life in Scotland, through his work in the Continental Navy during the Revolution, and into his later years serving in Russia under Catherine the Great. The film doesn't skip the big moments, especially the Battle of Flamborough Head in 1779. That's where Jones, commanding the Bonhomme Richard, takes on the HMS Serapis. It's a brutal sea fight, and yes, it's the one where he supposedly said, "I have not yet begun to fight." The movie leans into that, but it also shows the strategy and pressure of the moment pretty well for the time. Production-wise, they actually cared about getting the ships, uniforms, and naval tactics right. There's a documentary feel to some scenes, with narration explaining the context of the battles. It's definitely dramatized, and the romantic subplot with a French noblewoman is Hollywood filler, but the rest of it tracks closely with real naval history. This one tells the story of Mary Silliman, a real woman living in Connecticut during the Revolutionary War. Her husband was a Patriot leader, and in 1779, he's kidnapped by Loyalist raiders. While he's held captive, Mary's left to manage the farm, raise their children, and fight through local politics to get him released. This one stands out because it's told entirely from a civilian perspective. It shows how the war divided towns and families, and how the conflict didn't just happen on battlefields. It happened in kitchens, churches, and courtrooms. Historically, it's incredibly accurate. The film is based on the biography The Way of Duty, which used Mary's actual letters and journals. And when the record wasn't complete, the filmmakers worked with historians to fill in the blanks in a way that felt real. The costumes, dialogue, and settings are all grounded in serious research. J.L. Bell, one of the top historians of the Revolutionary era, called it undoubtedly the most historically accurate film about life during the Revolutionary War. The Crossing tells the story of one of the boldest moves George Washington ever made, the surprise attack on Trenton in December 1776. Jeff Daniels plays Washington, and the film focuses on the famous nighttime crossing of the Delaware River, the march through freezing cold, and the attack on the Hessian troops the next morning. In terms of accuracy, this one gets a lot right. The look and feel of the campaign, the uniforms, the desperation, the sheer exhaustion of Washington's army are all done with care. Jeff Daniels' performance as Washington gets a lot of credit, too. He doesn't play him as some marble statue. He's exhausted, frustrated, and fully aware of how bad the odds are. It makes the eventual victory at Trenton feel earned, not inevitable. The Journal of the American Revolution gave it a 7 out of 10 for historical accuracy, and it won a Peabody Award, which says a lot about how well it handled the storytelling and research. April Morning tells the story of the first day of the American Revolution, not from the view of generals or founding fathers, but through a teenage boy in Lexington. Adam Cooper, played by Chad Lowe, is a young apprentice. His father, Moses Cooper, played by Tommy Lee Jones, is part of the local militia. The movie builds up to the morning of April 19, 1775. Historically, it gets a ton right, down to the smallest details. When Paul Revere shows up, he says, "The regulars are coming, not the British are coming," which is more accurate for the time. The British uniforms aren't just red coats. They're split into actual troop types like grenadiers and light infantry, and the gear matches what soldiers would have worn in 1775. The retreat from Concord is one of the best parts. You see the militia using real tactics, ambushes, terrain advantages, to harass the British all the way back to Boston. It's chaotic, but in a way that feels deliberate and grounded. Historian Roger Launius even called it perhaps the best Revolutionary War film ever made, and Tommy Lee Jones absolutely nails it as Moses. The performance grounds the story in real emotional weight. All for Liberty is one of the few Revolutionary War films that actually focuses on the Southern backcountry, and it's based on a true story that most people have never heard of. It follows Henry Felder, a Swiss-German immigrant living in South Carolina, who ends up leading a local militia against the British and Loyalist militias. He's played by his real-life descendant, Clarence Felder, and, yeah, this is the kind of passion project that actually pays off. What's impressive is how accurate it is, especially for an indie film. They shot in 14 actual historical sites across the Carolinas. A ton of the cast and crew were reenactors, so everything from the uniforms to the tactics feels authentic. American historian and author Roger Launius called it one of the better Revolutionary War films, mostly because it avoids romanticizing the war. It's not about George Washington. It's about the kind of people who never made the textbooks but still changed the outcome. There are a lot of movies about the Revolution, but not many are brave enough to take on Benedict Arnold head-on. Here, Aidan Quinn plays Arnold, and it doesn't just jump to the betrayal. It starts with him as one of Washington's best generals. You see him at Saratoga, commanding fearlessly and getting injured, all while slowly growing more bitter as Congress overlooks him and leaves him deep in debt. They don't paint him as innocent, but they do show what pushed him over the edge. Historically, the movie's solid. The events are mostly accurate, even though the timeline's compressed a bit. His secret dealings with the British, the plot to hand over West Point, and the capture of Major André, it's all in there. Costumes and sets are strong, and the visuals do a good job bringing the era to life. The Journal of the American Revolution gave it a 7 out of 10 on accuracy. They dinged it a little for modern-sounding dialogue, but overall, it gets the story right. It doesn't excuse Arnold, but it makes sure you understand why he did what he did. This one's a Disney classic based on the novel by Esther Forbes, and yes, it's aimed at kids, but it actually gets a surprising amount right. The story follows a young silversmith apprentice in Boston who gets injured, loses his career path, and ends up thrown into the heart of the Patriot movement. He meets real figures like Paul Revere and Joseph Warren and gets swept into events like the Boston Tea Party and the battles at Lexington and Concord. Historically, it doesn't rewrite the big stuff. The Tea Party is shown as a disciplined act of protest, not just chaos. The movie brings in real slogans, real groups like the Sons of Liberty, and a version of Boston that, for 1957, looks reasonably close to the real thing. Costumes, weapons, and even some of the military drills are all on point, especially considering this was a family film. It does simplify the story. It's Disney, after all. And yes, the cast looks very 1950s. Some reviewers even joke that they forgot to wash the Brill cream out of their hair. But for what it is, it's accurate, it's respectful, and it's still remembered fondly by history teachers and reenactors as a great entry point for young viewers. The Scarlet Coat is a spy thriller set during the Arnold-Andre conspiracy, and it takes a Hollywood approach, but it doesn't totally abandon the history. The main character, Major John Bolton, is fictional, but he's based loosely on people who actually worked in Continental Counterintelligence. He's sent undercover to expose the spy network working with Benedict Arnold, and that leads him straight to Major John Andre. The film follows the West Point plot pretty closely. Andre's capture, the unraveling of the scheme, and his eventual execution are all included. And while there's a romantic subplot added in, because of course there is, the overall structure of the story lines up with historical events.